All right, everyone. Our third speaker, Professor Marita McCabe.
Thanks, Terry, for that. Now, what I'm going to do is talk about something which neither Jeff nor Terry have spoken about, and that is the place of sex within relationships. We don't talk about sex. We don't talk about where it fits into relationships, and yet it's an essential aspect of relationships. And in particular, I'm going to talk about how sexual dysfunction impacts on relationships. And it has, as you will see, a major negative effect. The flip side of that, of course, is that a positive sexual experience is very conducive and very enhancing of relationships. But I'm going to come at it from the dysfunction end. Okay, so firstly, where does sex fit in to relationships? How does it actually work? And what we know is that sexuality at any age, whether we're talking about adolescence or whether we talk about old age, it's an interaction between a range of different variables. It's an interaction between our biology, that is, our age, the kinds of medical problems that we might be experiencing, our hormonal levels, so what our physical functioning is like, the psychosocial aspects, and this is whether we are functioning well in terms of depression, anxiety, what our body image is like. So all of those factors feed into how well we are functioning sexually, as well as our relationships. So in psychosocial, I have the psychology of the individual, how well the individual is functioning, and also how well the relationship is tracking. And we'll unpack this a little bit more in a moment. And finally, cultural. What does our culture, whether we talk about the broader cultural setting or our specific cultural setting within our family or within our smaller cultural group, what does that say about the acceptability of the expression of sexuality for both men and women? What does our society say is an acceptable way of expressing our sexuality? Is it okay for a woman to be sexual, or is it that the woman needs to be quite coy and quite dismissive of sexual interactions? And so in order to understand people's sexual expression, we need to understand all of these different parts. So if we start off with females, and we look at some general observations about female sexuality, and then we'll go on to males. What we know is that female sexuality, the extent to which females feel sexual and want to engage in sexual activity, is highly contextual, and that it is discontinuous throughout the life cycle. This is not so much the case for men. For women, what we know is their sexual response and their desire ebbs and flows, and is dependent upon the current contextual and relationship factors, as well as historical and biological factors. And so what we know is that for women, fairly soon after childbirth, they're not particularly interested in sex. And that can go on for quite a long period of time. Children are not an aphrodisiac. Children have a major negative effect on women's sexuality. They're just not interested. It's not because they don't want to become pregnant again, it's because they're tired. It's because they are just not interested. I mean, the child might come into the bedroom, they're going to have to get up in a little while to feed the child. Completely alone. And this is quite normal, but yet this can cause women quite a deal of distress and concern. When the woman is going through the menopause, she may experience vaginal dryness, hot flushes. She can be really quite out of sorts. And if the woman is feeling out of sorts, she's not interested in sex. For guys, they are able to separate these things more. But for women, if they are feeling fatigued, stressed, anxious, depressed, they've got bad body image, they're just feeling not good about themselves, this has a flow-over effect into their relationships and into their sexual expression. As I said, for men, there's more of a separation that occurs. So how does age impact a woman's sexuality? How does this change as the woman gets older? And what we've got are a number of different factors that impact here. We've got the biological factors, and so as I said, going through the menopause, we've got hormones, aging, drugs, so general health. So these factors impact on her sexual expression. Cultural factors, and the reason why I'm emphasising this, I think that we often overlook the role of cultural factors, and yet we know that within families and within broader cultural groups, particularly for women, there are quite strong cultural messages that come out in terms of the acceptability of a woman expressing her sexuality, and so her sexual identity, her social role, and the level of support that she receives. Interpersonal factors, the quality of the relationship is particularly important for women. Not so much for guys, but particularly important for women. And the psychological factors. I have here things like anxiety, depression, body image, fatigue. All of these factors are important for women. And so for women, what we find is that there's a there's a high level of overlap. If a woman's experiencing desire difficulties, she's also likely to experience arousal problems and orgasm problems, difficulty having intercourse, and pain. And so these are major factors for women in terms of the overlap. And so if we look at the actual frequency, this is a general population sample, you can see that women, a large number of women, experience sexual problems. So somewhere between a third and a half of women are experiencing some form of sexual problem. And the reason why we've got 50% and a third is because of this level of overlap. So if women are experiencing desire problems, they're also highly likely to be experiencing arousal problems and perhaps also satisfaction problems. It's unlikely for women if they experience just a simple sexual problem. What are the factors that relate to, that separate sexually functional women from dysfunctional women? Women are much more likely to be dysfunctional if they've had distressing sexual experiences in childhood, if their current attitudes to sex are negative, if they don't enjoy sex, if they've got high levels of performance anxiety, so that they feel that they are in a sexual situation they need to perform. Poor body image, stress, and depression and anxiety. So we've got here some of those individual problems as well as historical problems that relate to sexual dysfunction in women. Also, they have got quite significant problems in their relationships, not just in a particular area. Not that I'm saying that being in a longer relationship is a problem, but women who are in relationships for a longer period of time are more likely to be sexually dysfunctional, and we can talk about that in questions afterwards if you want. They place less importance on sex. Their partner is likely to have also a sexual problem. And then we've got this relationship satisfaction is low, they have difficulty resolving conflict, and they have low levels of intimacy. So we've got a whole lot of different aspects of the relationship that are experiencing difficulties that are present within women with sexual dysfunction. For men, these are the problems that men experience, primarily erectile problems and premature ejaculation. Some men, but a much lower number of men, experience multiple types of sexual dysfunction. Men have fewer problems. They're less relaxed about initiating sex. In terms of their relationships, it's generally relationships in general. They're less confident and they have lower sexual esteem. In the community-based sample, they've got reductions in sexual satisfaction, lower quality of life, more distress and interpersonal difficulties. good at this. And so you can see that a relationship problem is present within male problems and female problems. The guy is wanting treatment for the problem, the woman is saying no. And so what we have here is some kind of relationship misunderstanding occurring. So if we just sum up with this, relationship issues are likely to contribute to sexual dysfunction and sexual problems for both men and women and lead to problems in the relationship generally. The sexual dysfunction, unfortunately, has often been in place for a longer period of time before treatment is sought. And so both partners have adjusted their lives. And so they have this sexual problem, but they have adjusted their lives in relation to that problem. So if we're going to treat sexual dysfunction, there's a need for a recognition of relationship factors that are associated with the sexual dysfunction, much more likely to be the case for women than for men. There's need to be an assessment of these factors and treatment of these factors. So we need to not just treat the sexual problem, but we need to treat the relationship problem as well. Thank you.